YouTube. God bless from winners all around, y'all. The Treadmill Wealth Coach is here. And today we're going to talk about value. Do you understand true value? Do you have value in yourself? Of course you do. Is there value in other people? Of course there is. Do you give them the value that they're worth? I don't know. See, a lot of times we get bent out of shape because we think that if somebody's better than us, has achieved more than us, has more than us, that means that it belittles us. But it doesn't, right? And then sometimes people have way more value than somebody wants to give them, right? And that person's really taking advantage of you, right? Taking advantage, they're being greedy. Sometimes they don't even know it, right? So you often hear people talk about, do you understand your value, right? But my question to you today is also, do you understand other people's true value? Because that's important. Let me give you a couple examples, some things to think about, right? Um, we had a situation where we had a restaurant club in Washington, D.C., and we've actually had this situation a lot since the television show launched, DMV Hottest, where people would want to be on television. We actually have it all the time. Uh, a partner and I had deep conversation on this. Another one today about, it's a new year, y'all, and so, you know, people will take advantage. If you ever hear you give people a mile, give them a mile, they'll take 10 miles, or give them a minute, they'll take 10 minutes, right? Give them an inch, they'll take a mile, right? That's what I was trying to find, right? And so it's part of it is up to you to be able to cut that off, be able to say, no, we're not going to do that. And since we launched the television show DMV Hottest, it has massive, massive value. Now, we're not saying we're not better than anybody else, but getting people to understand that value has been difficult. And we had a restaurant DC club who, continuously wanted to take advantage, right? Um, we have it constantly. We talk to artists, we talk to performers, all the time. And it's I know it when it comes to marketing, it's hard to get that across to people in people's brains because I've been in marketing for decades, working with small businesses, small and starting artists, but I've also worked with billion-dollar companies and your superstar artists. And there's a difference. And one thing I know is it's very clear to me what the difference is. The difference in being small and big is marketing. It's marketing. It's consistent marketing and understanding there's a value there, right? I like to take the example of a recording artist, a singer, a dancer, a hip hop, right? So anything, a band. And you look at, let's take the Jackson Five, for example. Everybody know Michael Jackson, the Jackson Five. Start off the Jackson Five. They did spin-offs. Michael became this superstar. But why did he have so much value? Why did the Jacksons have so much value? So let's rewind for a moment. When they were little kids, they couldn't think. It was the parents, right? Probably more so Joe Jackson, who decided, is there a value? Yes. I'm going to make this value bigger and greater than it maybe is at the moment, right? So he set off on a quest to market, build a brand, and build a value for the Jacksons. Did he accomplish it? Absolutely. Probably better than most people ever have or did back then, right? Because Michael Jackson went on to become a superstar. His sister went on to become a superstar. If you mention the Jacksons individually, the Jackson Five, it's a household name because Joe Jackson decided to create a value. Did everyone give the Jacksons the value they deserve? I'm sure that they didn't. But Joe Jackson had to stand firm and say, no, there's a value here, even when there wasn't a value, right? which means how do you stand firm when there's no value and trying to create value? Sometimes you have to turn people down. Sometimes you have to cut them off. Sometimes you have to go in a different direction. Now, Doc, who gives you the right to share value with us? Well, those who know me know I've been in the game for a long time. You're talking about multiple decades. I won't tell my age, but over 3 decades, approaching 4. Because I started really young, right? I owned a magazine, a national distribution, one of the best that there was, straight from the streets. I've been on national television. I've been on local television, radio, had the publication, built multi-million dollar companies, built my own $1 million brand, retired people from their jobs, created millionaires. This is not to impress you, to impress upon you that I have some degree of success, understanding, and with my coaching, I often have coached and mentored people to understand this thing called value. Now, getting back to value, the Jacksons, Joe Jackson, probably his idea or someone in his circle, right? Without that thought, without that grind, determination, there would have been no value of the Jacksons. My stepson wanted to perform. I'm not perform. He wanted to play basketball. When I met him, he was about 5, 4 or 5. I got married to his mother, was married for 11 years before we got divorced. And during that time, at around 6 years old, I began to talk about his value and where he wanted to go to play basketball. Because he knew very early on, when I met him at 5 or so, he wanted to play basketball. But I knew his father wasn't tall, his mother wasn't tall, and therefore, he probably wouldn't be tall, which meant that in order for him to have the value to play basketball in the NBA, he was going to have to be the best thing smoking, right? On fire, right? He was going to have to be the best thing in the county. He was going to have to be that Spud Webb type of dude. Now, how do you create that type of value? Practice, grind, hustle, sacrifice. That wasn't in him. I couldn't be the Tiger Woods dad or the Joe Jackson dad to my stepson because it was my stepson. It would have created problems with his biological father, even though I was for the most part raising him, right? It created issues often with my ex-wife now because don't push him so hard or don't do this or are you, I don't know about that. I didn't have that same type of resistance when it came to my kids, Malcolm, Mason, and Miles, until I got divorced. Then there was all types of resistance. But that wasn't resistance because of understanding of value. That was resistance because divorce. It shouldn't be that way, but it is. So it had nothing to do with value, right? When we were married, I didn't get that resistance. But I got the resistance on my stepson, right? And so I could not create in him enough value for him to become that NBA player. He's 24 now. He's not an NBA player. I'm not even quite sure what he's doing. Last time I heard, he was working on like a Panera Bread or something, right? Because he wasn't willing to create that value. I couldn't do it for him. He was going to have to do it along with me and with his mother. That wasn't coming, right? And so value doesn't start. My point is that value doesn't start where it looks like it is. It starts long before that. With Joe Jackson, was an idea. With Tiger Woods' dad, it was an idea, right? Where I wanted to take my children in life was an idea. That's why they were into sports, boxing. My son Miles was supposed to start boxing at 8 years old, right? They found him, what is it called? He was recruited in soccer. He never even played soccer before at a young age, right? So I saw the value. Unfortunately, the divorce got in the way, of all of those things, but the value began there. And this is a good point, if you don't massage and push, sometimes manipulate, and brand that value, you can have the necessary foundation or concept, but it never materializes into what you want it to become because it takes work and grind outside of just value. And so, my point of the Jackson story is the fact that it started a long time ago, and then they began to build it. They eventually got to Jackson 5, and then the spinoffs, Toya spinoff, well, the other sister spun off, Michael Jackson spun off, right? They are all these spinoffs, Janet Jackson, because they created massive, massive value. But I'm gonna tell you something. I'm sure that during that journey, which is still going on today, God rest his soul, Michael Jackson passed away. Toya's not doing anything, but Janet Jackson's doing some stuff, right? It started a long time ago. Um, so it's going to be a process. And so we have the same problem as I was saying earlier with a television show, because people don't understand the value, right? Um, and we had this club, I told you, DC restaurant. He wanted to take advantage. And you tell him this, he wants to go a different direction, right? We have situations now where people say, well, just because you have the TV or just because of this, I'm good. Now, I've heard that my whole life. No one said you weren't good. No one said you didn't have potential. No one didn't think you could succeed and make big things happen. But let me tell you something. Maybe today you're not that good. Maybe today your value isn't quite there the way you think it is. Yes, there's something about selling yourself and pushing yourself, but also understanding where in the world you are. And the way we are, where we are today in society, if you're a DJ, if you're a performer, if you have a band, you might be the best in the world. But that has nothing to do, well, I should say nothing. It has not as much as you think it has to do with the success that you're going to have. The first thing is probably going to be the market. The second thing is Jim Collins said in the book Good to Great, is going to be your team that comes together like this engine behind you and pushes from all these different angles to make sure you become who you become. And at the end of the day, it may be your talent that keeps you in the game or keeps people coming back to you or maybe drew their interest initially, but it's not going to be the thing that propels you into hyperspace. Now, I'm a professional drummer, musician, producer, and I know lots of people I know that do what I do. They don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear it. And that's okay. You don't need to hear it to make it true. Somebody once told me no one has to know what they're talking about to argue with you. And so, as I was saying, we run into that with the TV. Had a conversation the other day with somebody. Look, we want to put you in front of 11 million people over and over again. We're going to, because of that, we're able to negotiate and bring deals to the table, opportunities to the table that never would happen. We're able to get people to want to do opportunities with you that they never considered, never thought about, and maybe out the box for them. But because we have this going on, because of the track record of Winners All Around, because Winners All Around didn't start with a streaming platform company. It started decades ago with a management company and a producer named Walt. And they went into magazines and buying companies and selling companies and the real estate and wealth building and coaching and network marketing and musicians and Grammy nomination considerations and number one billboards and TV and movies. It started a long time ago. This was a journey to create this value. DMV Hottest is the name of a television show segment. And that, granted, that started last year, but not the value of it. The value of it came long before that. My partner and I, years ago in 19, I'm gonna tell you the date. We started a record label decades ago. And it was a band. Then it became Ski Johnson and Friends. Then it became Ski Johnson. Then it became the brand of Ski Johnson. Then it became SJ Enterprises and different spin-offs. So all these things collectively comes together over decades. And even when I went through a divorce, they're like, you have this job and you have this and that. Because I've connected to somebody, because I worked with somebody for so long, that doesn't mean you have a job. No, that doesn't mean that at all. Where's the money? Because there was no money in the beginning. And then when there is money, like if I'm management and there's money, okay, there's money. But then if I don't manage anymore and I'm still friends and we still hang out, there's no money, right? But that's because people look at things, especially with social media now. They look at things and they think they know what's happening behind the scenes, and they make all these judgment calls and assumptions. And they don't even know what they're talking about, which is what people do also with value. They look at themselves and say, oh, I play an instrument. There's 100 million people that play an instrument. Oh, I sing. There's hundreds of millions of people that sing. You know, oh, I'm an actor. There's 100 million actors. Just because you're an actor or a singer or a dancer or whatever doesn't mean a business person, doesn't mean just because of that you have a value that people are going to invest in or see. You have to correct that. And you have to show up and provide value when people give you the opportunities to provide the value. And if they give you the opportunity, and you can't provide the value, if you know none of your talent is there, then the rubber meets the road, you have problems. Because then you couldn't deliver the next level of value that was needed for you to win. So, artists, business owners, whatever it may be, start looking at things from a broader perspective. For about 2 years, I used to argue. A lot of you know I was in a travel company. And I can be a little aggressive. I want people to win. I want to win. So I used to go back and forth with the owners of that company because used to have videos that we used to market to promote the company. And they were terrible. They sucked. They were bad. And other travel companies and other companies would come out with these videos, and the marketing tools were better. And I kept saying to them, what's wrong with y'all? Why? Then I said, okay, I'm the type of person, I don't just complain, I try to bring solutions to the table. So I brought them one of my friends of mine, who's a top movie producer, massive editor, like brilliant. Look, guys, he can redo these videos. He can create the tools and things. He'll work with you in your budget. I knew they could afford it. We talked about cost of things. And I couldn't figure out for years, what's wrong with these people? The answer was always, not at this time. No. And as I moved up the chain in the company and got to the top and became better acquainted and friends with the owners, I found out something. It wasn't that the people I brought to the table didn't have any value. It wasn't the people that was doing the work that they couldn't see their value wasn't as great as it needed to be. It was the fact that they had relationship with people. It was the fact it was something like the guy who was doing these videos and editing was like the brother or uncle to someone who was doing the printing for the company. And then the person who was doing the printing was connected to the caterer who was doing the catering for the company. And through all these things, it came back to the company. So they could not get rid of this person who was terrible at videos and things, even though they knew the value in that person wasn't there, because it would have destroyed the value in the relationship with the printer and the value in the relationship with the caterer. See, those are things the average person doesn't look at, doesn't understand, and can't relate to. So often when I'm having conversations with clients or people that are coming up and I'm discussing things, you can see their eyes looking like a deer in the headlights. They don't get it. They never considered this type of situation could be at play. That something else is going on. It may not be personal. And a lot of people don't do that with our TV. They think, oh, well, it's just TV. But they've never bought TV. They've never tried to get commercials about it. They don't understand what it takes. Or they may not understand the relationships that are needed behind the scenes to make it work. Or what you're going through to make it work. I can spit off the top of my head right now. Opportunities that we have for promoters, opportunities that there is for social media influencers, opportunities that there is for musicians and singers and bands, promoters. We got lots of opportunities, restaurants that wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the value we created over the years that led into the TV at a whole different level that trickles back down to us being able to offer things to you. And then one of my other mentors said, you want to be rich or do you want to be right? Because most people want to be right. And it may mean that may not be what it takes for you to get rich. You're going to have to humble yourself. You're going to have to do some things that don't make any sense. You're going to have things that are going to happen that you may not have an understanding of. That's why you need coaches and mentors that you learn to trust and follow and lead you down some paths that may make no sense to you at all. But if you already knew it, you'd probably already be doing it. You haven't crossed that level yet to get to that level of value. And that's okay. But humble yourself. Open your minds. Make some sacrifices. Take some risks. Give some people some benefit of the doubt. Try out some things. And I tell you something, if you can do that, you probably gonna get a whole lot further and create value for yourself and demands that you can get down the road that you aren't getting right now. No one cares about how many books you read, what you did 20 years ago. People want to know, what are you doing and what value do you bring to the table now? If you're a DJ, if you're a performer, if you have a band, that's nice. But if you're hired, how many people want to walk through that door, buy some of my food, buy some of the drinks, and buy a ticket? Many people on social media may have followers, but they can't convince people to buy anything. Well, in business, you don't have much value. With that being said, guys, hope this gave you some insight on value. And watch for our podcast on Winners All Around. We're going to dive into this more, because I'm going to tell you on a daily basis now, people just pluck my nerves, as my foster mother would say. But I understand where they're coming from. We try to help everybody win. Hey guys, this is Dr. Malcolm D. Alexander from Winners All Around. Check out the YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. Winnersallaround.com. WAAnetworks.com will take you straight to YouTube. Please like, share, repost this. Give us the comments. Again, God bless. Happy New Year to everybody. And don't forget, guys, if you're in the Washington, D.C. area, you're an artist, you're a business owner, we'd love to get you on one of the TV show platforms. We have the brunch going on Saturdays in Bethesda. A lot of things popping off in 2026. God bless, and I'll see you soon.